You've landed in the confidence zone with Susan Axelrod, the confidence coach. This is a place for topics of information and inspiration, a place to support you to find your confidence, get bold, and get going. Activation is needed today at all levels. Don't wait for someone else to lead. Lead now where you are with what you have. Your energy and enthusiasm matters. Believe it or not, it impacts all of us. Find your confidence, get bold, and get going. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Confidence Zone. Today, it took me being a little confident to interview my guest today, whom I consider to be one of the leaders, one of the global leaders in a topic that I started in my career when I was 22 years old. Today, I'm 63. I am joined by my friend, colleague, and philanthropy consultant, Jim Langley. His formal bio says James M. Langley, president of Langley Innovations, has pioneered a number of practices that have been emulated by hundreds of institutions of higher learning. His expertise and insight, particularly on how institutions can adapt best to changing and unchanging philanthropic realities, is highly sought after by Canadian and US institutions and professional advancement organizations. My personal introduction is that I call Jim Pastor because I find his sane and thoughtful preaching on philanthropy and fundraising today, which he shares prolifically and freely in open source, to be a word that I can follow. After epic revelations of the destruction of one of the multimillionaire philanthropists of modern times, Jeffrey Epstein, recently, Jim was interviewed on NPR on the topic of ties by charitable institutions to problematic donors and the possible consequences for the colleges and universities connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Also, recently, he was quoted in the New York Times saying this: "If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is." I asked Jim if he would meet me in the confidence zone to speak about the issue of fundraisers and the hyper need to raise billions now, how that works, how it goes, and what happens when chasing the dollars. For those who have only known me in recent years as the confidence coach, I want to let you know that I was a career fundraiser, then a fundraising consultant from the age of 22 to 53. Today, I work as an executive coach to global leads of international institutions, so this topic is still near to my heart. I want to welcome Jim Langley. Hello, Jim, my friend. Good to see you.
So good to be with you, Susan. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, what you're putting out is game-changing material, and I want to thank you for the tenacity and commitment to share your wisdom. Sometimes wisdom comes from failure and overcoming obstacles, to share your wisdom exactly now. So, Jim, I want to get started with a complete admission. I'm going to say this. I've thought a lot about the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm just going to say this. When I was a young fundraiser in a major university, I was in my late 20s and loving my career. I stayed in it for 30 years. I would have killed to have been in the room with Jeffrey Epstein. At that time, he was charismatic, he was connected, he was rich, and he was giving money away. And if I had had the opportunity to run to New York and meet up with him, not only would I have said yes, I would have bragged about it and I would have been lauded for it in my shop. And I know that that is 100% true. And I know other people got ensnared in that net. So I want to ask you, what's a fundraiser to do?
Well, you would have been far from alone at that period because of all the reasons that you laid out. And to me, Susan, it speaks then to the vulnerabilities. What is a fundraiser to do? Well, perhaps the question we should be asking of the industry is, in what situations are you putting fundraisers? And are you creating the occasion for mischief, if not corruption, if not something god awful, right? And so you put a fundraiser into a marketplace, sometimes less than equipped with the right kind of training, less than equipped with a brilliant vision, told to raise just very significant sums of money, always more and more and more. And that person is casting about looking for the people with whom they might connect and then seizing on any connection. I would also say that the speed with which we expect money to be raised also creates underlying vulnerabilities that can lead to difficult personalities, intrusive personalities, and corruption, right? So you add all those elements and they create the occasion for this kind of misconduct. And you are so determined to meet those goals, to get those expectations off your back, or even on a more positive way to succeed, to prove that you can do this job, that you are bedazzled and you become a little blind to some of those flags that should start to appear. So I am very empathetic to the conditions that lead people to ethical lapses or even a sort of a succumbing to the norm. I call it just coming down to something by going, oh, I'll worry about that later. That's not really important. When something inside you is gnawing at you. So the first thing I think we have to do is to try to change the orientation of the industry so that it recognizes that gifts, significant gifts, are long in the making. They come from long developed relationships. They come from long negotiations. And when we try to hurry up the process, what we do inadvertently is leave ourselves susceptible to operators, to people go, oh, you want money fast? I got a deal for you. Oh, you want entree? I got a deal for you. And the reason they've got a deal for you is they've got an angle. They've got something that they want. And Epstein is a classic example of someone who used philanthropy and the vulnerabilities surrounding it to advance his own agenda, protect his reputation, and then in the later part, post 2008, try to rehabilitate, to shine up what was already a very tawdry reputation.
I mean, that, of course, goes back, a century with the robber barons using philanthropy to
Yes,
get into heaven and,
yes,
reverse their reputation.
yes,
I'm very well aware of that. There's a long history of that.
yes.
And, as you were talking, I was listening and thinking to myself, gosh, in my day, as I mentioned, that campaign at that university at that time was only a $200 million campaign. And at that time, that was a massive campaign for
Huge.
a major
Oof.
university. And today, and we already had the pressures then, Jim, I'll never forget that I felt that my donors who were giving 25,000 were not valued at
Yes,
that time.
already
25,
then.
yeah, not
It's
at
like,
25. Right. And I remember an architect in Boston, and it was a big gift and it was a big stretch. And, he was an alumnus and he said yes, and he did it. And I remember going back and feeling that that's just not valued. Now, today we have $1 billion capital campaigns, and metrics have been imposed, using algorithms and assessment and,
yes, yes,
and so this really leads to this
yes.
hamster wheel, right?
That's right. And then you add to that look at American higher education. We want to reach a far broader nonprofit field, but look to American higher education, who so many people think has all the advantages. Oh, it's easier there. Well, 90% of support for American higher education is coming from 1% of donors. In most mature institutions, those have been around 50, 60 years or more, the 35% of their annual support is coming from 3 donors, Susan. So it creates a dependency, right? Once you get into that situation, then every year to make or exceed those numbers, you need at least 3 really big gifts.
Right.
Well, that becomes slim pickings. So as you say, you start looking around for people with the capacity to give. And let's face it, under those circumstances, your ethical radar is not highly attuned, nor is your radar about difficult personality or what will this relationship lead to in the long run, right? Is this a person who will become a partner in mission, or will this become a very difficult person who will try to kind of whipsaw the organization according to his or her will? Right? That's where we are in so many instances.
Yeah, and boy, gosh, I still work with plenty of people. I do a lot of free advising for smaller nonprofits, as you mentioned, community-based or even global, but small. And they're constantly looking for the big fish. You know, they have
Constant.
the modeling from higher education or the major institutions, museums, hospitals, et
Yeah.
cetera, and they're constantly looking for the big fish. And I always say, you know, one big fish can die in the water,
Yes.
in having nothing to do with anything that you did, but it's a bad model. Still, in all, I'm not sure. I don't know when that model is going to change. The in higher education,
Yeah.
deals are made at top levels,
Yep.
and I have one person I know, let's just say, where they were looking for $100,000 donors, and I'm saying we should be looking for $1 million donors because the impact of this
Yeah.
mission is worldwide. It's exactly what's needed right now,
Yeah.
but they don't feel, you know, they're not in that space, so we have to. And even $1
Yeah.
million today are not the biggest ones, right?
Well, that's right. But then you look at the anatomy of some of these gifts that come from long-term relationships. Somebody gives, fairly late in life a very significant gift, and you say, well, show me the story behind it. There's usually a 15 or 20-year relationship that culminates. And then you look at the first gift, it's very modest, right? So I remember when I was working at UC San Diego, that's a gift from them when I left. I was working with UC San Diego, and Irwin Jacobs gave that magnificent gift of $110 million to name the School of Engineering, right? That that we were that was a huge gift at the time. It was larger than many of the private schools had given, right? And it was dwarfing everything else that had been given before, right? So everybody then is gaga about this $110 million gift, but they don't realize that Joan and Irwin Jacobs gave 20, 25 years previously a starter gift of $250.
Yeah.
What if that hadn't been valued? What if that relationship hadn't been valued? What if it was like, oh, that's a little too modest for us, let's not pay attention, right? So this is what you see over and over again, is the relationship culminates in this magnificent giving fairly late in life.
Yeah. Yeah, the decades of relationship. I had a donor, it was for a community hospital then. I used to visit. She was a teacher. She was a teacher. She happened to never have had children. Her husband had died, and I used to visit her, and had such a lovely relationship with her. And I asked her to include us in her estate plans. Anything else would have been inappropriate because she needed her money to live at
Yes,
that time. I could have
yes,
gotten money from her, but
yes,
I knew she needed the money. And when she died, we got a $1 million check from
yeah,
her estate. And people say, how did you do that? And I
yeah,
said, years of tea.
yes.
years years of tea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I heard
Yeah.
one recently from a client where a woman, I believe it was a woman who'd given over 40 years, but the total was incredibly modest, like a couple $1,000s, but she leaves an estate gift. So what we're learning is start paying attention to the years of giving, irrespective of the amount, because that has become the most predictive, productive source of significant estate giving is loyalty. But to our point, who's nurturing the seeds of loyalty? Who's nurturing the early gifts? Who's respecting these very modest commitments? One, because they're valuable in and of themselves, but two, that it's the nurturing of philanthropy that becomes so important, not just trying to skim off some big gift from in an opportunistic way from somebody who appears capable of giving that. And I think that's where we've lost our orientation, is who's going to support the Susan Axelrod of today going to endless teas
Yeah.
with an elderly woman who in poor health. Oh, Susan, is that where your time is best spent?
I
Well,
mean, just to be clear on that, my boss, the executive director of the foundation, basically said, go to tea. Then I had a Milt. I met every Tuesday in the cafeteria with the big cookie and the coffee in the cafeteria. He left a major gift. And you're 100% right. My boss knew what I was doing then. And
Yeah,
she allowed me to
that's
do
great.
that work in that way. You're 100% right. And over into the 2000s to the 2010s, we really, as the metrics began to come in, that you could have algorithms to, okay, I get it, don't get me wrong, I
Sure.
like technology, streamlining is good, being able to quickly assess and all the things, but we did lose some of the personal touch that we're
Yeah.
talking about. To be clear, the 35% of annual support from 3 donors, then what happens is, and this is real. I know this because I have several organizations I've worked with where we have this, but then the fundraiser looks great. The
Yes.
fundraiser met the
Yes.
goal,
Yes.
and then the
Yes.
fundraiser can go get a job somewhere else. Now
Yes.
another institution is hiring me or you to
Yes.
say, we hired someone who was successful, but we're not raising money. And that's in part
Yes.
because of that exact dynamic.
That's right. And that person is aging and starting to say, why is this dependence? Why are they keep coming back to me, right? So they become resistant to it after everything they can give has kind of been milked from in this aggressive way, this campaign, another campaign. So we're seeing that pushback now from those donors saying, why aren't you developing other sources? Why do you keep coming back to me?
100%. That's exactly right. So Jim, what you talk about, the wisdom that I say you've gleaned and gained from the commitment to being in the juice of
Yes.
philanthropy with your
Yes.
donors on behalf of these amazing institutions you've worked with, or also even as a consultant, I know you step in, you're connected
Yeah.
to even those clients. And, you know, the thing is that it's rough out there today, Jim. It's rough out there, and you can feel what their need is. You can
Yeah.
see what's happening in corporate America,
Yes.
spending, $200,000 on a failed marketing campaign that they never use. That's a true story. And
Yes.
then if we had that $200,000, we would have been, as Jerry Panis said, changing lives or saving lives, right?
Yes. Yes. It is rough. It's much rougher than when I started my career, when you started your career. It was never as easy as people thought, right? It always took more stick-to-itiveness and more of an ethical orientation, the commitment to the relationship. It always took that. But now it's so tough, not only because of a contraction in the number or percentage of giving households, right? We've lost about 30 million giving households in 30 years, and that trend is continuing. Not only that, but then think about the displacement when USAID is no longer funded, remnants of that seek philanthropic support, when National Public Radio, when research is cut, right? All those things then flood into the philanthropic market. So there's a higher rate of displacement of existing 501c3s, and there's always this new group of people who are trying to perpetuate mission to continue the good work they did. And somehow, where is the philanthropic response to that? People asking, where's the philanthropic response? So you're asking for a more significant philanthropic response from fewer participating households who already feel overwhelmed by the requests being made of them. It's tough.
I mean, honestly, Jim, my health insurance went from $256 a month to $1,500 a month. I am one of those people who got hit. And so
Oh,
$1,500 a month was money that I would have been giving to
of
charity
course,
that I cannot in good conscience right now
of
uh,
course,
give to charity. That started in January, and until I really work through this. And so when I say I'm living this, I really am.
of
And I'm a
course.
perfect example where $1,000 a month never mind the
Yes.
extra 500. I could
Yes.
have given $1,000 a month to the food
Yes.
pantry and
Yes.
so on and so forth. And and I did my charitable giving from my heart space that was important to me. And so, yeah, it's a rough road out there. I want to really talk about this idea that you started sharing when I started following you years ago, and you've mentioned it here today. I'm looking down at my notes here. The idea that people were in long relationships with organizations, and
Yes.
over long relationships, we have stories. I was a consultant for an organization some less than 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. And I still get their newsletter and I still see the names of people who have been connected to the organization for decades. They're
Yes.
loyal, they're long term. I actually helped them start a planned giving program. That's what they hired me to do then.
Ah,
And so now they have a few hundred names in their Giving Legacy Society. But the stories that come out of these long relationships, that's what you talk about. And I want to try to say this, what you teach us is inspiring donors through your mission impact, through the clear, articulated, interpersonal engagement
yes.
with donors. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, that's right. Don't chase the gift, develop the partnership, and then understand the deep donor desires. Having done a lot of research, Susan, and aggregated the research of many other people, I'm looking for what's at the core of what we call a philanthropic impulse. And what I've seen are three deep desires: to believe, in other words, to believe in an organization, believe that it holds itself to high standards, that it makes a difference, that it will convert your investment into a human impact, right? That's powerful. We need to believe in something bigger than ourselves. And as faith is kind of contracted, that as fewer of us attend church or faith services on a regular basis, I think it should be a transfer. Who can you believe in? And we look to noble nonprofits who are living out important missions. And really, every person is so deeply dedicated. So we want to believe. And when we find an organization we believe in, it evokes a response. But the second one is to belong, right? And we keep forgetting this, that there's a deep human need, and particularly as we get more virtual, to find a human group of human beings that we belong to. And interestingly enough, that when we don't find that, we become less philanthropic. So there's a wonderful Canadian study that shows the decline in philanthropic participation is tied directly to human isolation, either as a result of getting off in the virtual world or just falling between the cracks. So somehow people losing connection, right? And so when we lose human connection, we become less philanthropic. So there's this deep desire to belong. And when we belong, we contribute to that which sustains us spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, right? Because the benefits are so palpable. When we belong, oh, of course, we want to perpetuate this. We see, feel, and touch that. And then the last one is to make something better. And I do feel that we got a little slipshod here by just saying we do good work. We're always in a campaign. We always need more. And I think we got a little slipshod in saying, here's what we did with the last tranche of money you gave us. Here's what we could do if you gave more. That we've got to get better about defining where impact is. And interestingly enough, the example you used, food banks, is one of those that has done reasonably well by doing just that. Here's the need, here's the growing need. For X amount of money, you can stock a shelf in a food bank for a month. They quantified it. And we
Yeah.
see those nonprofits that are starting to quantify what $1,000 can do, or be very explicit about where your money can be applied, are doing far better than the ones using these beautiful themes, but not backing them up with examples of differences to be made.
I mean, I call it CPSU, which I'm sure I learned from someone else, Jim, in my career where I was devoted to learning. I still have notebooks of conferences I attended 30 years ago, I swear. So CPSU, cost per service unit.
Ah,
It was when I left higher education
yeah,
that I joined as director of development, a community-based agency, an amazing Unity House, amazing community agency that also had a food pantry and many other services. And that's when I started developing CPSUs with the food pantry in particular. When your mission is so esoteric, you can't even
yeah,
develop a CPSU, a cost per
yeah,
service unit, then
yes.
it's hard to really connect with the donor. So, oh my gosh, just give me a moment, Jim. I just want to, this happens. This is why I just want to say thank you so much for coming into the confidence zone, having this conversation about philanthropy so the people in the industry or the donors can feel more confident. You said to believe, to belong, to better. This is such a simple construct. I want to really go back to believe, Jim, because the reason I started our conversation saying when I was a young fundraiser, remember I was 22. So by the time I was 28, I was a major gifts officer at a major university. I would have gone after or to engaged with anyone who
Yes,
was a big fish.
yes.
And at that time, among the alumni I met with, I don't know who ended up good or bad. That was, I don't know how many years ago that was, 1985, 6, 7. So then we were back to who can you believe in? The fact that your institution may have received money from Jeffrey Epstein 25 years ago, after the arrests and all that, the convictions, I mean, it's a difficult story. But the one thing that we do know, most nonprofit CEOs are doing the best they can. You mentioned the cuts to USAID and other so many services today, cutting SNAP, food stamps, and so on, completely created this overlay that these food pantries or food centers of which we're speaking were not prepared to
Yes,
fill in the gaps. Now
yes,
the CEOs, the associate directors, the development officers, the program people, they're just burdened with this. And
yes.
so going back to what you can believe in, it is what we learned from you. I'm sorry, I'm talking long, but I really think this conversation is important. What we learned from you is this engagement, the interpersonal person
Yes,
to person
yes,
engagement. Now, I do things virtually. I'm okay with virtual myself. In person is better if you can do it. Getting to know the people running your organizations at whatever level, if it's a major hospital, university, the domestic violence shelter, because these people in the trenches really need our help and support today, don't they?
they do, more so than ever, and the human need is growing as well that they're serving. It's growing because of all the situations that you just described, right? So many things are converging to make human need greater. I also think it's a very kind of poignant moment because when we respond to human need out of our base of talents, whatever talents we were given, whatever life taught us to be important, is where we find our real joy. So many people are lonely and isolated. And I think philanthropy provides this wonderful corridor for expression, for transferring values, and for helping, or I don't believe it's actually helping, I believe it's sharing. I believe that when we give of ourselves, we get something back. So it's a sharing that gives us such meaning in life, such a sense of purpose, such a sense of centeredness, right? And this is what every great faith has preached for millennia as well. Now, so this is a moment
This
where
is,
we,
oh my gosh, I just have chills from this. We just have another minute or two, but I just want
sure,
to say, what you just described is in your belong category. I say the same. You don't have to run for office or lead the community organization. You can have a chili cook-off in your neighborhood
that's
and then bring people in, have fun, vote, and then you can all bring the chili out on the streets and feed people, or feed your neighbors. You don't know who among them
Yeah.
might need the food. The belonging that institutions offer is massive. And then finally, to better that you would feel in your small way that you could better something, that you could improve something.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just absolutely, that is the most purposeful. And, you said in talking about transferring values, when we respond to human need, that's when we can find real joy and meaning in our lives. I
Absolutely.
love this so much, Jim. And I hope
Good.
that people who are watching or listening will rewind. And you can be sure I have my chicken scratch notes that I take when I'm talking to you, but I am going to really articulate this out. I love the simple construct of it. And in this moment, I'm talking to any person who works for a nonprofit organization, an institution, a charitable foundation, to really call you in and listen to the simple language here that feels like soothing to the soul. Thank you
Sure.
for really synthesizing, Jim, and really
Oh,
being
thank you.
able to so clearly, deeply, and genuinely articulate the opportunity we have in this poignant moment.
Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for your friendship over many years. I consider myself quite fortunate to know you.
Oh my gosh. So just leave us with where you would like people to find you so they can really read and listen and learn and rise.
So I do post regularly on LinkedIn, and I also post a newsletter copy with a link. It's free. And so I would ask you to not only follow, I don't like that word, but become a kindred spirit and join the conversation so that we can help each other and rise to this moment. But thank you again.
Yeah. First of all, I don't not like the word follow. Follow me, follow me, follow
Yeah,
me. The
yeah,
people who are doing dastardly deeds, they like the
yeah,
word follow.
yeah, yeah.
And so, you know what? If you have received anything today, I beg you to follow Jim. Read his material on LinkedIn. He'll respond to you personally. Get the newsletter and soothe your soul. Soothe your soul if you work in the industry, if you give, and we need to 100% say, if you need a consultant, bring Jim in. And I can't say enough how much I mean that. We are in the confidence zone, Jim.
That's right. Good. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad to be here, and I wish you continued impact.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, Jim. So I look forward to our next conversation. And thank you again for spending time with me, and especially at this poignant moment in the history of our world that we live in. Thank you for how much you give. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Susan.